Hey, what's up guys, back again with yet another video in the C++ series. This time we're going to be going over how to get input from the user, from the console, the various ways of doing that. And you may be wondering why I am recording this right now. It's currently December 13th, 2019, even though I already made this video back in May of 2019. And so basically I learned more about it, how to get user input, and I just want to make a more in-depth video on how to do it, because I don't ever want to make a non-detailed video. So anyway, I'm just going to redo it for you guys so you can get a better understanding. So let's just set this up real quick. And if you're in this series right now and you notice that my IDE is different, it's because I later on in like video 20 I switched to this cin IDE, Integrated Development Environment. I find that it's better, and you can get it for free if you have a student email. But yeah, it's just personal preference, whatever IDE you choose to use. So anyway, that's all you. Anyway, so let's get started here. So getting user input is basically a way for you to get information from the user. Let's say you want to ask the user for their birthday, or maybe something more simple like their age. And if they're over 18, then you could take them to the porn site. And if they're under 18, then you can take them to Teletubbies website or something like that. Something like that. And so you can make that happen with user input, because we're gonna be able to ask the person who's typing in the console, like their age. We can ask them their age, and they can type in the console their age and submit it to the program, and the program can act differently depending on what their age is. So that's something a little more advanced. We're actually going to be going over if statements next episode. So that's where we learn how to make decisions in our code, so stay tuned for that. But this is going to help you a lot, okay? Anyway, now that I'm done rambling, let's get started here. So let's say we want to ask the user for their age. Let's try that out. So let's make a simple cout statement here saying, enter your age. Okay, pretty simple. And we're not going to do inline on the end of this, because we want to basically ask for the input on the same line as we're displaying the age. Actually, I'll just put it in line so you could see how that would look. And then, so we're going to need a variable to store our input inside of. Okay, so we're going to be asking for an age, so let's use an integer. So int age is equal to, we'll do 0 by default. Actually, just for testing purposes, we'll do 45 by default, because if we display the age at the end and it still says 45, we know this process did not work. So anyway, how do we ask for input from the console? All you got to do is use what's called the cin object, which is obviously very similar to the cout object. These are both output streams. So this is how you output stuff to the console. This is how you get stuff from the console as input, okay? And so you're going to do angle bracket, but it's going to be pointing to the right this time instead of to the left, so to the right. And then now on the left side, or the right side here, you're going to put the variable that the data needs to be stored inside of, just like that. So that little line of code, that statement right there, is going to be asking for the age from the user. It's going to open up a little prompt for the user. And then after we get the age, what we want to do is print out the age, just to verify that this process worked. So we're going to say cout, what shall we say? We should say, thanks, your age is age, just like that. Okay, pretty simple. And so let's see how this works. And by the way, you might be, if you're ever confused on which angle bracket direction should I use, if you ever get it turned around, just remember that it's pointing in the direction the data is flowing. So let's say, so in the cout thingy, right, you're taking this data here, this string, and you want to put it inside of this cout stream, which is the cout, which is the console, right? So you're taking this data and making it go to the console, so it's pointing towards the console, the cout thingy right there. And then you have the cin thingy, which is pointing towards the age variable, because you're going to be getting stuff from the console and then storing it this direction into this variable here. That's just how that works, okay? The angle bracket points in the direction that the data is flowing. Don't forget that. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Anyway, so let's run this now and see how this looks. Okay, come on, run faster. There we go. So now it says enter your age, and as you can see down here, you have a blinking cursor, so that means it's asking for input, and you can actually type stuff in now. Pretty cool. But we don't want to type a string, we want to type a integer, obviously. because that's the input we're getting. So let's type 15, and then it says thanks, your age is 15. So it worked, pretty cool. So what this is doing, basically the way this works is, whenever you do cin, it's basically going to prompt you like it did a second ago, where you can type anything inside of it, and then it's going to take that data and then try and fit it into this variable. No matter what data type the variable is, it's going to try and put that data in that variable somehow. Okay, so let's say we type a string inside of here. It's asking for an age, an integer, but we type a string. Let's see what happens in that case. So let's type poop. Thanks, your age is 0. Okay, so even though we typed poop, which is a string, not an integer, it's still going to say your age is 0 because it cannot work with strings. So it has to do something at least. So that's the only like kind of issue with getting input from the console. That you could have situations like that where the user doesn't really care about the rules of the program. Like they don't even know the code of the program, right? So they don't know they need to enter only an integer, right? But you just have to be careful with stuff like that, right? So let's say you enter a double, right? Like 50.0, right? That's their age. Instead of entering 50, like an integer, they're going to do 50.0. Let's see what happens. So it says, thanks, your age is 50. So that's pretty easy. It's able to convert the double into its integer form, right? Which is just 50 with no decimal point. So that's pretty simple. But yeah, hopefully that makes sense. So that's how you get input, very, very simple. But let's say you want to get multiple input at once, okay? So, well, let's do it right here. Let's say enter your gender, okay? All right. So then we're gonna we need a variable for gender. We're gonna make a string this time. So string gender. All right. And so we'll do cin gender just like that. And then after we get the input, we want to do your gender is gender, just like that. Oh yeah, by the way, we forgot to do this thing. We need to take this off the end. So that means that the prompt will be on the same line as this, okay? So there we go. Same thing for gender. So that should be pretty good. So let's test this out now, see how it looks. Cool, so it says enter your age, and we can type something in on this line now instead of the line below. And we're gonna say 67. And it says thanks, your age is 67, and then it says enter your gender. And I know the cursor is like in front of it, but that's just like kind of a glitch because you can move it over here, or when you start typing, it's gonna move over here automatically. Anyway, so enter your gender. We're gonna say space cowboy. Okay, and then it says your gender is space. So why did it say space instead of space cowboy? And that is because the cin object that we have here, the cin stream, is only able to get one thing at once. It's not able to get basically things separated by white space. Like what I mean by white space is just like space, enter, tab, stuff like that. So basically, just to put it simply, it's only going to grab what's in front of the white space. So the white space in this case would be the space that we entered. So it's only going to get everything in front of it, and the rest of it is just going to be placed into the basically the keyboard buffer, you could call it, or the input buffer, which is basically your RAM. So basically that's going to be your RAM, your random access memory. It's going to be placed in what's called a buffer. So that data is not lost forever. It's going to be placed inside that buffer. So yeah, it can be used in the future, but don't worry about that. Anyway, so just keep in mind that if you use white space using this process, it's not going to work. You want to use something else. I'll teach you about that in a second. How can we get stuff like that, like a sentence? How can we get a sentence? I'll show you how to do that in a second. But anyway, so what we did here is we got an age and then we got a gender, right? And we got it one at a time, which is good. You can do that if you want to, but let's say we want to do it all at once, to make the process more simple. We can do that. We can just get both inputs at the same time. So age, and then you can also get the gender. But let's move the gender variable up top here. There we go. And so let's get rid of all this here. Yeah, we'll get rid of that. So basically, yeah, I'll show you that works, but let's change this message here. So it says enter your age, and then your gender. Okay, easy peasy. And so now let's go down here and say cout, thanks, you are a gender that is age years old. Okay, awesome. So that should work. So let's test this out and let me show you how this will do it. There we go. So it says enter your age and then your gender. So we can type in our age, so 12. And then how do we enter the gender? All we got to do is press space. Like enter any. It doesn't even have to be space. It could be a white space. It could be like a tab. It could be any white space. Okay. Anyway, after we can put an infinite amount of white space, because basically the cin object here is just going to ignore all the white space. It only cares about what you're entering, right? So so now we can put the gender. So we'll say booty monster or something like that. So now it says thanks, you are a booty, and that is 12 years old. Okay, and of course it only said booty because we had another white space right here. So this is not included with this input here, which was put into the gender string. Okay, but you get the point, right? So thanks, you are a booty, and that is 12 years old. Okay, that's kind of creepy. Anyway, so that's how you get multiple inputs at once. And like I said, you can, it doesn't matter how much white space you have in between, it'll still want you to get that input, or just it'll wait for you to enter the input. So for example, if I do 18 and then I press enter, it's still going to want me to enter the next thing of input. It still wants me to enter the gender, right? So it's not going to end the input gathering process. It's still going to wait for me to type in enter. No matter how many times I press enter, it still wants me to put in the gender. So we're going to type goblin, that's our gender. Thanks, you are a goblin, that is 18 years old, okay? So just understand the whole white space process, you know, that's just the tricky part with the cin object or the cin stream. You have to deal with the white space, okay? Anyway, so that's pretty cool. And let's say we want to get a sentence. Let's say we want to get a sentence, which is like basically a full line of input, no matter how much white space we have in between everything. It's going to include white space, basically. So let's say we want to get a string. Let's get rid of all this, actually, just because we don't need this anymore. So let's make a string here called sentence. String sentence is equal to, and actually we'll just not initialize it by default. And let's say enter a snazzy catchphrase. Okay, kind of random, but oh yeah, there you go. And we'll make a new line. Okay, so now, so to get a full line of input, all you got to do is call this special function here called getline. But the problem is it doesn't recognize the getline function, and that is because we need to include the header file for getline, which is just string. So that's part of the string header file, you know, the getline function. Okay, so now we can use it since we imported it. So put a parentheses here, and we'll learn more about functions later. Don't worry. So getline, and the first thing it wants is the input stream, which is going to be cin. And the next thing we need is the variable that we want to store our input inside of, okay? So we'll just pass in sentence, just like that. So what this is going to do is basically get a full line of input from this input stream and then place it into sentence, this variable here. Easy peasy. And then now to test it out, we'll just output sentence, just like that. And let's see how that works. And so basically, like I said, this is going to get a full line of input. With great power comes great booty, okay? And then we press enter, and that's going to terminate it. So that's when the getLine function knows that it's the end of the line. So when we press enter, so then it's going to say, with great power comes great booty, because it was successfully able to store that within here, okay? Easy peasy. All right, so let's move on to the next thing. That's how you get a sentence or a line of input. Let's move on to something else, like the get function. So we have the cin object, but we also have something called a function that is part of the cin object. So it's called cin.get, and this allows you basically just to get a single character of input from the console. And you may be wondering, why would I use this if I could just make a character here called Bob, and then I could just do like that, cin Bob. That would work. But let's say you want to get a special character like a white space. That wouldn't work with this because white spaces are ignored whenever we use this. So let's try that out right here. So press play here. Okay. So let's say we want to put some input here. So if we want to, if the character that we want to store within Bob here is a enter key, then if we press enter, it's not going to work. if you press space, it's not going to work. If you press tab, it's not going to work. It's just going to keep going forever, no matter how many times we press enter or any white space. So we're basically, the point is, we're unable to, or basically the cin object here ignores all white space. So that's a problem, right? So let's say we would type B, there you go, and then we press enter. Now finally B is going to be stored into Bob, because we pressed enter after putting in another thing, besides white space, right? So instead of doing that, we could use the .get method here. So .get, and to use it, all we got to do is provide the variable that, or the character that we want to store the input inside of. So just Bob, like that. So what this is going to do is basically get a single character of input from the console and store it in the character of Bob. Okay. So let's also add a cout statement here just to test this out and make sure to verify it works. Okay. So we run this now. So now let's say we want to enter the space, a space character as our character here. So we press space and then we press enter to tell the input we're done. And now it ends the program, and it also outputted Bob, but obviously we cannot see the space, but we can assume it worked. But if we want to make sure it worked, what we can do is cast this character into an integer. So what it does is, before it outputs the character, it's going to change it to its ASCII number, an integer of that ASCII number, so we could see the ASCII number of whatever character was stored inside of Bob. Okay, so just so that we can verify if this works or not with white space. All right, because we cannot see white space obviously. So let's say we press space and then press enter again. So 32 is going to be stored in the character. So that's perfect, because if we pull up an ASCII table here, 32 is equal to space. So if we go here, 32, that's a space bar. Okay, pretty cool. So let's try some other stuff. Let's try the enter key. So that would be number 10, the new line thingy. That's just the enter key. So let's try that out. So now I press enter, and now it says 10 inside of the output statement here. Okay, which is good because 10 corresponds with the enter key. And the same thing for tab, and same thing for any other white space we can think of. So that's pretty cool. So the most common use of the cin.get method is actually, or function, is going to be something like this. So if we have a program that does something like blah 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 blah, and then we want to do something like cout press enter to continue. You've probably seen that in a program at some point. Press enter to continue, and with the normal input statement, we cannot get an enter inside of the input stream, right, which is the cin object by itself, because it ignores white space. But if we do cin.get, we can actually get the enter key. Actually, it would make more sense to change this to anything. Press a key to continue, because there's no way of us, we haven't learned if statements yet, so there's no way for us to check and see if this is an enter yet. And by the way, if you leave it empty, it's basically just going to not store it in any variable. It's just going to be getting the input but not storing it in a variable. Okay, so that's actually going to work for us because we don't need to be storing it. All we want to do is make the program pause until they press a key or enter a key. So as you can see here, it says press a key to continue, and the program did not end yet because it's waiting for us to enter something. So press any key, G, enter, and then it says process finished with exit code 0, so the program is now done. So let's say we want to press the enter key, press enter, and now it says process finished with exit code 0. So you get the point. That's actually the most common use for this, I believe, at least from what I've seen. But that's another way to get input. And okay, so that's pretty much it for getting input, but there's one more thing you need to know. And let's say that we mix together the cin object and the cin.get function. Okay, so let's say we have a program that says enter your favorite color, cin color. We need a color string variable here. There we go. So cin color, and now we're going to ask for the color, which we did here, and now we're going to output the color just to verify your color is color, just like that. And now let's say we want to do the thing where we say press a key to continue, press a key to continue, and then we're going to do cin.get just like that. So we can do that. Actually, we forgot to put the inline right here. Okay, there we go. So let's run this now. See how it looks. And it says enter your favorite color, so I'm going to put blue. And it says your favorite color is blue, and then it says press a key to continue, but then the program exits, which is weird because this is supposed to pause the program until they enter something, right? But obviously it just ignored that pretty much because it just continued without, waiting for you to enter anything. And that is because it got the input of the enter key. Whenever you press the enter key after typing in your favorite color, that enter key is going to be stored inside of the keyboard buffer in your random access memory, and this is going to access your random access memory and then get that input, which is the enter key, and then it's going to automatically continue. So hopefully that, if you don't understand, let me actually show you. So let's say this little thing right here is our RAM, okay, our memory for our program, our computer. And inside of the random access memory, we're going to be storing first the color, obviously, right? So we're going to put the color here. So color, and then after we get the color, we're also going to be storing something like that, which is the null terminator, which represents the enter key. So obviously this is going to be stored inside the buffer because whenever you type input using the cin object, you have to press enter so that it knows you're done, right? So whenever you type in the color and you press enter, the value of what you just typed into the console, the color and change to blue, the color and the null terminator is going to be stored into the memory, and then it's going to take that first value, which is the string of color, and then it's going to store it inside of the string, the variable that represents the color. But this is still going to be here though. Don't forget about this. So it's going to go to the next line here and say your color is, and then it's going to print out color, and then it's going to say press a key to continue, and then inline. And then next we have cin.get, which is going to get a single character of input. But first it's going to check the buffer to see if there's anything in there for it to get. And there actually is. It's going to be this. This has not been processed yet or put anywhere. So it's going to take this as input, and then it's just going to go to the next line because this is counting as input. Even though you didn't type anything in, it's still going to take what was left over from the last input and just use that, okay? So I hope that made sense. It might have been a little confusing, but because I'm used to reading this in a book, it's hard to explain, on a screen like this. Maybe I need a PowerPoint explanation. But anyway, hopefully that makes sense. Maybe you should read up on that if you don't understand. But there's a way for us to get past this. Basically, we can use something called the ignore method. So cin.ignore. Okay. And what this is going to do without anything inside the parentheses like this by itself is basically just going to ignore the next thing of input from the input buffer. Okay. So when we type color is going to be stored inside of there along with the null terminator for the enter key. And then the color is going to be stored in the variable, and then it's going to output the color, and then it's going to go to here. And it's going to ignore the next thing in the buffer, so it's going to skip over the null terminator. And then the cin.get thing is going to be called, and it's going to say, okay, there's nothing left in the buffer for me to use. So then it's going to ask you for input, and then it's going to wait for you to type something in. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. That's just a way for you to skip over the buffer so there's no problems like that situation. Okay, so enter your favorite color. We're going to say purple. Enter, and now it says your favorite color is purple, and now it says press the key to continue, and then obviously now it's waiting for you instead of just skipping and using the enter key from last time. Okay, so we can type a key now, enter, and now it says process finished with X code 0. So yeah, hopefully I didn't mess up that explanation. Hopefully it makes sense for you. But those are the different things that you can use to get input from the console, from the user. And yeah, so first you have the cin object, which is just the cin thing that we have here by itself. And along with that, you can actually get multiple things of input at once and store them into multiple variables at once. And then after that, we learned the getline function, which is going to be allowing you to get a full line of input from the console, so there's no issues with the white space. And then after that, we learned the cin.get, which is a way for you to get a single character from the input, including from the console, including white space. So it allows you to do stuff like this in situations where you would want that, or in a different program where maybe you just want to get a white space for some reason, like a space key. I don't know. Anyway, alright, that's pretty much it for this episode. If you have any questions about what I showed you today, you can ask in the comment section below, or you can join our Discord server where we have about 700 members currently. And you could join our Discord server and you could ask questions there if you want to, if you need help, or you could leave suggestions, or you could just hang out, get some friends if you're lonely, anything like that. So join it. There's a link for that in the description below, so check it out. And then also the code for today's episode is going to be in the description below, so you can check it out. In case you forget how to do all of this, I'll leave a detailed explanation in the description. So bookmark that for future use in case you forget how to do any of this, how to get input from the console in various ways. And yeah, my throat hurts from talking so much, so I'll see you later. Have a good day, peace, and goodbye. Leave a like and subscribe if you like the video, by the way.